Greetings and salutations, everyone. Tonight I'm going to bring you a Dogman or SKINWALKER encounter, which was sent in to me by one of our subscribers. I hope you guys enjoy this story. I know I did, and I've talked with this subscriber and they are struggling with this issue. So, let's get on with the story. So now that I look back on it, I think it all started last year when my family and I went camping at Trout Lake in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, which is close to Mount Adams. Clyde Lewis, who does a show on the radio from Portland, Oregon called Ground Zero, was talking about Mount Adams and the UFO activity there as one of the top UFO hotspots in the U.S. We have always been obsessed with UFOs and anything alien, but we got a totally different aspect of the paranormal up there. It was September and we were excited to get away. We packed our little boat and jeep and headed out. The energy was weird there and the lake was shallow and not very exciting. My husband got a ticket for not having a whistle, which was weird, and the ground seemed hollow and it echoed. My kids and I went for a hike, but regretted it because we felt like something was watching us. There were knocked down trees made into crosses everywhere, and the forest was sick, and the vibe was weird. We all started fighting for no reason after a few minutes and decided to go back. The people there seemed strange, so we decided to just eat and hang out at our campsite. The kids fell asleep and my husband and I went to the lake, and there it was, a weird orb in the sky. Super bright and orange, and it was flying weird and then disappeared. We were very excited. We went back to the camp and it was dark. That's when the strange howling started. It came from two directions, like they were talking to each other. It was loud and lasted about 45 minutes the first time. The second happened for about 15 minutes at about 2 a.m. We fell asleep after, and around 4, I woke up terrified with sleep paralysis. I couldn't move. I had my first nightmare I ever had in my life about a witch who was possessing my whole family to attack me, and the end of the nightmare was me and my husband sitting at a picnic table, and he reached over and grabbed my neck, choking me. As soon as I could move, I told my husband there was a witch here. He said, "Be quiet about it till morning, and don't talk about it till it's light out." It scared me so bad I couldn't stay there. We had to go to another campground 2 miles up the mountain, called Four Lone Lakes. We get there and take our little boat on one of the 5 lakes there. They are shallow, only about 6 feet deep at most, completely in the middle of the mountains. Only a few people are there. Well, it was dusk, and these owls started circling us on the lake and flew at us, basically trying to make us leave. So we did, and left in the morning. Well, our lives have not been the same since. We had bad luck after bad luck. We got our Jeep stolen 2 days before we were moving to Oregon from Washington. And it had everything in it, including birth certificates, IDs, school transcripts, and our phones, and a $500 money order in it we had just gotten. We had $1,500 saved up to move and ended up having to spend that on another vehicle. We had already gave notice to our landlord, my husband's job, so we were screwed to say the least. Our only option at this point was to take our camper and go to the campgrounds until we could save some more money. It's very expensive in Washington, and we knew nobody here, and I have no family, and my husband's, they live in Idaho. You can only stay 20 days at each state park, so we were glad there were 2 within 10 miles of each other. We ended up at Paradise Point in Washington, and it was going okay until the last 10 days. I got deathly sick out of nowhere, and nearly 9 days hallucinating and a fever with extreme pain. I could barely walk or stay awake. I was not nauseous, but I was starving, it seemed like. I ate the entire time, which is strange. I had extreme anger bouts, and my heart was pounding, and I felt like I was going to die. I went to the hospital in an ambulance, and they didn't know what was wrong with me. 2 days later, I woke up, and it was over. That night, I had a dream about some owl faces, and they were evil-looking, and they were flying at my face, each time a different evil owl face. I told my husband about it. It wasn't scary, but more weird. We moved our camper to Battleground Lake, and this is in December of 2017. Around the 20th is when this started. The forest felt strange this time. There was a weird energy in the air, and there were owls hooting all night long. I mean loud, like echoing for hours. Then started the howling, almost identical to the Trout Lake howling. I was thinking, what are the odds? I looked it up on Google to see if anyone else have heard these and maybe posted the recordings on YouTube. And there it was. People had been hearing the howls and assumed it was Bigfoot. Well, I'm not sure it was Bigfoot now. Around the 23rd of December, this old man showed up and set up his weird shelter with a clear tarp, and keep in mind, it's freezing here at this time. He looked about 75 and drove a black Xterra. We didn't really think anything of it at first. Well, that night after my husband left me and the kids, we were watching TV in the tent camper, and this overwhelming sense of fear came over me like I had never felt before. I looked at my 12-year-old daughter, and she could feel it also. The other two kids were oblivious at first, then the howling started. This time it was bone-chilling, and it was loud, but like a barking, how it went on for hours. The lake was lit up with it. It was freezing cold, then there was the owls, and this time it seemed like something was mimicking the owls. We just sat there in fear. We were so scared to open the door to go pee, and it felt like something was outside. It went on until 5 in the morning, and up there it's darker than dark, and anywhere in town it gets around 4 and stays dark until about 6 or 7 in the morning. When my husband got back from work, I told him about it. He said that when he was down by the entrance getting some shower tokens, he had this weird sense of fear and felt like running to the car. Now, my husband's a big guy, and he doesn't scare easy. The next night was even worse. We had gone to Portland that morning, and I remember this car at the dollar store. It was an old muscle car. I thought it was very pretty, but before we left Portland, my husband decided to offer the man a tarp because we felt bad it was so cold. The old man told my husband no and said he was there brushing up on his survival skills and only using what he could find. He kept trying to offer my husband food, asking questions like how long we've been here. He said no, and we left. When we came back, it was almost dark. That same car from the dollar store, I swear I had seen it come through the entrance. I was a little freaked out, given the energy of the place and what had happened the night before. We had dropped the kids off at the camper and went down to get some tokens for the shower. We came back up and my husband left for work at around 11 at night, and the howling started again. It only started after my husband left every time. At Battleground Lake, they also have some rustic cabins that you can rent, and that night till around 6 in the morning, not only was the howling, but there was someone who kept coughing and slamming a car door. This went on for hours. Cough, slam, cough, slam, cough, slam. Then the owls. The next day before my husband left for work, I asked him to take me down to get more shower tokens, and we saw the car again. This time we kind of chased it through the entrance just to see if we could get a license plate number. and it sped up and was gone. We couldn't catch it. As we were driving back up to the campsite, we saw a bright flashlight walking around the campground, so we decided to park somewhere and watch and see who it was. Whoever it was walking pretty fast, and we saw the flashlight over by our campsite, and finally, a little bit closer, my husband had turned on the headlights earlier. Well, the person who was walking turned off the flashlight when it got closer to the car. For some reason, I got this instant feeling of terror, so I was so scared I begged my husband to turn on the headlights, and as soon as he did, we saw the old man. He had turned his head ever so slightly, and his eyes, they shined so bright yellow. It was like a cop's flashlight. The glare was intensely bright, and it was his eyes. It was supernatural. We both looked at each other in complete disbelief. It was almost as if he'd showed us on purpose, then just kept walking in all these campsites, definitely looking for something. He was up to no good, for sure. I got back and I started to research some things. I looked up anything that could have possibly been looked up on an old man stalking the campgrounds. I looked up anything that was associated with it. I came across this police sketch from a rainbow gathering in 2012 where a woman went missing, and it was the same man, even the hat. But I started thinking about how he was walking. It was too fast for an old man, and he was waddling like abnormally. Not like he was sick or disabled, but I don't know, and he was very tall. I had calmed down a little bit, and my husband went to work. We had gotten a new neighbor that day, and I was grateful because I didn't feel alone, but it didn't help. That night was worse. It started the same way, the howling. Then there was the mimicking right by our camper. It was mimicking the coughing, and then there was the growling. But it wasn't a dog growl. It was a low and weird. This time the fear was intense. It hit me fast and my daughter as well, besides the feeling of being watched. Something slapped the side of the camper, and it seemed like something was dragging its hands across it, and then something grabbed my daughter. She had been leaning up against the fabric of the tent camper. We were frozen in fear. The lights were bright inside the camper, and we just laid there. I had her next to me, and we fell asleep listening to the mimicking of the coughing. Not because we were tired, though. The weird part is the fear that we were feeling was coming to me in weird images, almost like a message that was pixelated. I can't explain it, but it felt like something was trying to communicate with me, or I was picking up on someone else's or something else's thoughts. I felt like it was feeding off our fear. We woke up every morning drained and tired and grumpy, like it was causing this on purpose to create a bad environment. The next night was really scary. First, my neighbor didn't seem the same. He looked different, like greasy or disheveled. It was very weird. And he was coughing, almost like the mimicking we heard. Howling started again, but this time it didn't go on as long as the owls, only for a short time. Then something started messing with the tarp. It was lifting it up and putting it down all night long. I had every weapon I had sitting on my lap. I had a machete and my aluminum baseball bat. I had a torch and lighter fluid. I was ready this time. The fear was out of control, and I was tired. My daughter was tired, but we didn't have anywhere else to go. And now that I look back on it, I swear I heard somebody say my name. I just shrugged it off because my name is really hard to say. And I had not even spoken to my neighbor, so I know it wasn't him. The next day the old man left. The howling stopped. Still scared, but I think it was because of the night before. 2 days later, the man went missing in the same forest about 20 miles away. All of this is connected through the Lewis River, both Paradise Point and Battleground Lake and Larch Mountain, where the man went missing. It was only in the news for 2 days, and all of the men's family had been there that night, and he was only 30 years old. Another man also went missing at Four Lone Lakes in November, and his clothes were found folded neatly, and he was found naked. They said it was from the cold, but I don't believe it. This is where the owls flew, and the weird part, the sketch of the old man. The only name they had for him was Owl. I believe this man was a shapeshifter or a skinwalker and had been stalking us. The nights before I got deathly sick, there were raccoons surrounding my tent. They were fighting and acting weird, growling at each other, and they never came back after I was sick. The owls were connected to this situation and my dreams about the owls. I think they were telling me about what was happening. I've always been highly clairvoyant, and I think these creatures seek us out because we can feel their presence and they feed off our fear. I have never felt anything like that before in my whole life. Never. Our lives have not been the same. We see its face everywhere and its eyes, the yellow glowing eyes. I believe there is a connection with all these missing people, and it has the ability, I believe, to mind control or persuade people to sleepwalk. I believe clairvoyant people are like food for this creature. Alright, guys, this is what one of our fellow subscribers or family is going through. And I've spoken with this subscriber extensively, and they genuinely are afraid. This person is a genuinely good person also. Just the feeling I get when I've spoken with this person. So let's be respectful in the comments below, and let's try to help this person. I myself, I believe it's a skinwalker, and I've had some conversations with other people, and they agree. If you have any suggestions or any comments for this person, please, once again, be respectful and please share them. With that, have a good night, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.